Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards and Nostalgia, and in today's video I'm going to talk about a few characters of the game that I really enjoy. I've been going over different things, parts of my collection lately, where I showed off my top 50 players to collect. Well, today I thought it would be interesting to talk about a few players that I identify as some of the great characters of the game, just the fun type players that make sports more interesting and compelling to me when I read about the history of the game, be it baseball, football, or hockey. So the first one I want to talk about is Hank Sauer, and he was a left fielder with the Reds, the Cubs, the Cardinals, and the Giants. But it was with the Cubs that Sauer was beloved by the fans. They used to call him the mayor of Wrigley. And if you just take a look at this card, I believe this card is from Wrigley Field because you can see the ivy there in the back. And he played left field there, and he was just beloved by the fans over there. He was a very modest player, and they had what they called the Sauer section. And what they would do is they would shower him with tobacco after the game. And he liked to chew tobacco, so his teammate Andy Pofko once observed that the fans would just throw these pouches of tobacco at him. And his career was very interesting to me, and it might be one of the most interesting of any major leaguer. So, from 1941 to 1945, he only played a total of 47 games. He did lose some time to the war. He played his first full season with the Reds in 1948 at the age of 32 years old. He only had 7 home runs before the age of 31, and then hit 281 from the age of 32 forward. I can't think of another player off the top of my head, and even through some limited research, that had a similar career trajectory. Now, of course, many know he won the MVP in 1952 as he led the majors with 37 home runs and 121 RBIs. Now, Hank did lose some time in World War II, but what really kept him from the majors and had him bouncing around from the minors is he was alleged to play poor defense, which I don't think was really true. He told a story about how he had a coach that really valued defense, and then he made an error one day during a tryout, and he got sent back down to the minors, and he didn't think that was very fair for him, and that disrupted his career some with the Reds farm system. But his bigger issue was he was said to have very quick wrists, and he was using a lighter bat, which was causing him to fall off a lot of balls. So one of his coaches gave him a 40-ounce bat, and that helped him drive the ball with more power. And it was one of the reasons why he was able to come up to the major leagues. Now, it's one of those things in baseball history that if he'd only received that bat sooner, he may have been looking at a Hall of Famer. But again, that's how baseball history goes. I wanted to share this 1953 Sport magazine of Hank. This would have been after his MVP year of 1952. And it says here, Hank Sauer versus the New York Writers. And this is from my father-in-law's magazine collection. This is one that I like to display. I think it goes great here with this 51 Bowman card. And again, this is the fun of collecting, where you have these little stories within the card, and you can just see, again, the Wrigley Field there, and just how he was revered by his fans. So when I put this in my card room on my commons case, that I like to call it, it's one that I really do put my eyes upon, and I think about just those days, just that nice summer day in Wrigley Field, and just hearing the fans cheer and throwing those pouches of tobacco on them. So there's Hank Sauer. Next character of the game I want to talk about is Lauren Gump Worsley, and this is my hockey example, of course. And this card here is a recent pickup from the 54 Topps hockey set. It's my first 54 Topps hockey card. And I got to say, I'm in love with this set. I think it's one of the most beautiful sets ever made. It's just the colors on this card with the red, white, and blue. And you got that large Ranger shield there, the old goalie equipment. And I really do enjoy the fact that there's a white background on this card, because hockey surfaces, of course, are made of ice. So it gives that, of white ice. So it gives that, that feel of a true hockey card here when you look at it. And this is a set that I am going to get some more cards from, just because I've just fallen in love with the look of these cards. They're simply beautiful. And I think what makes this card one of the most beautiful sets from front to back is that if you look at the back of this card, you can just see here similar coloring with the red, white, and blue. And it's got player information on it, the vital statistics, a cartoon. You can tell it's a hockey bat because you got the hockey stick there that separates the vitals from the player information. And it's just a very well done back and overall well done card from front to back. So I just wanted to add that into this video just my thought on this set. I'm very pleased with this card. This is a second-year Gump Worsley card. He played with the Rangers, the Canadians, and the Minnesota North Stars from 1952 to 1974. He played his entire career without a goalie mask. I think Gump was a beloved fan favorite because he didn't look anything like an athlete, but he was exciting to watch. And I'm going to put a short video down below in the description on him, and I think it's a fun video that you'll enjoy if you take a few minutes to watch it. He stood about 5'7". He was a pudgy goalie that flopped all around the ice. He was known to wear his emotions on his sleeve. If you scored on him, he would often get pissed off and smack the puck in the stands with his stick. And back then, I've talked about this before, the rigors of goaltending were very tough, especially when he played without a mask. He also had a fear of flying, and just the daily grind of playing and traveling led to his retirement from the Canadians after the 1969-70 season. And he did come back later that year with the Minnesota North Stars, where he finished his career in 1974. Goalies were desperately needed back then, especially with the expansion from the original 6 teams to, I think it was 12 teams after that. And with that expansion, there was definitely a need for more goalies. And Gump was a good goalie still, so he managed to make a little longer career for himself after that. Now, he did win 4 Stanley Cups with the Canadians. He won 2 Vezina trophies, and he's also in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now, the funny thing is he had a career losing record as a goalie, which is odd to be a Hall of Famer, and your career record was 333 wins, 348 losses, and 149 ties. But it's not surprising, being he played for some very terrible Rangers teams of the 50s and early 60s. And to play that long in the NHL during the original 6 era as a goalie makes him more than worthy, in my view, of being in the Hall of Fame. So you can't really look at numbers necessarily. He played a very long time in a tough era. So I think he gets a lot of credit and is a well-deserved Hall of Famer. If you watch my channel, you know I like to put cards that fit together. And I've been looking forward to adding a Rangers Gump Worsley card to my collection. So now I have an example in a similar type pose with the Rangers, his second team, the Canadians, and then where he finished his career with the Minnesota North Stars. I have some other cards of him too, but these 3 really stand out when they're displayed together because of the similar poses and the representation from each team. So very pleased to have these, and just love having a player like Gump, that type of personality, in my collection. Just makes it more fun and enjoyable to look at my cards. My football example today is going to be the hilarious Art Donovan, and he often appeared on David Letterman and Johnny Carson and a lot of the evening shows in the 1980s and even into the 1990s. And he's also in NFL films, and he would just have the funniest stories. I think some of them maybe were a little bit of tall tales or the fishing type stories, a little exaggerated, but he just had a warmth about him that I liked, and a personality that paralleled his play on the field. He was an all-pro defensive tackle, one of the finest players of his day. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1968. I believe he started his career in 1950 and played until, I think it was 1961 or 62. And he's primarily known for playing on the Colts. He played on both the original Baltimore Colts that went defunct. Then he played for the New York Yankees football team, and then the Texans, which is depicted here on his 1952 Bowman rookie card. Then he played with the next iteration of the Baltimore Colts, where he found his most success as a player in those great Colts teams of the late 1950s. And just some of the highlights of some of the things he's talked about. And I'm going to put a link to a video on him below, too, from Johnny Carson. But he talked about how he roomed with Don Shula when they were bachelors and a couple other players on the Colts. And he talked about the time when Hall of Fame wide receiver, elbowed Don Shula during a game and broke his jaw. And then him and a couple of his teammates made Don Shula scrambled eggs because his jaw was pretty much closed shut. So he had to drink and only eat like real mushy, soft foods. And Shula would complain about the consistency of the eggs, and he said that he was really, kind of a jerk about it, so to speak. But he was real fond of Don Shula. And he also talked about Bobby Lane breathing on him during a game, and Bobby Lane was the Hall of Fame quarterback with the Detroit Lions in the 1950s. and he was talking about playing against him, and it was the third quarter of the game, and he was breathing on Donovan. His breath just reeked of whiskey, and he said to Bobby, "You must have really been pounding them down last night." And Bobby replied to him, he said, "Last night, I had a few at halftime." And it just shows you the personalities and partying attitude of the players back then in the 1950s. And then my favorite, and I've talked about this in one of my earliest videos, was Norm Van Brocklin with the Rams playing against Art Donovan. I think he was playing with the Texans at the time. And he just kept hitting Van Brocklin, and he pissed Van Brocklin off, and to the point where Van Brocklin snapped at Donovan and said that, if you keep hitting me like this, I'm going to get you. And on the next play, Donovan comes running at him, and Van Brocklin just took the football and threw it right at his face. And back then, he didn't wear a face mask, so it just hit him square in the face and knocked him down. And then he said the rest of the game, Donovan would rush at him with his head down and his arms up in the air to avoid getting hit in the face again. Just the fun competition that you had back then in the 1950s. It was a anything goes type style. And just a fun character of the time. And I thought it'd be cool to show off some of my other Art Donovan cards in my collection. I got his 56 tops, his 59 tops, and 57, and then, of course, his rookie. The only cards I don't have of his, he didn't make a card every year, whereas his 58 tops and his 61 flair. So I have most of his cards. I just got to get those last two at some point. Well, I hope you enjoyed this look at some of the characters of the game, and everybody have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.